Hey friends, welcome back to our channel God Miracles Message 11:11. Dear God, lead me on the path that you have chosen for me. Dear God, help me to trust in your plan even when I don't understand it. Dear God, may your love and light shine upon me always. Dear God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Type 333 if you believe. Dear God, please give me the strength to overcome my troubles and the wisdom to see the lessons in them. Dear God, thank you for your grace and mercy, which are new every morning. Dear God, I trust in your goodness and love, even in the midst of difficult times. Dear God, may I be a vessel of your love and light to those around me. Dear God, please guide me in making wise decisions that align with your will. Dear God, thank you for your unfailing love and never-ending grace. Like the video if you believe. Dear God, give me the courage to face my fears and the faith to believe in your power to overcome them. Dear God, please help me to be patient and kind, even when faced with difficult people or situations. Dear God, grant me peace and rest for my weary soul. Dear God, thank you for the gift of life and the precious moments I get to share with those I love. Dear God, help me to forgive those who have wronged me and to let go of bitterness and resentment. Dear God, give me the strength to persevere through hardships and the hope to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Comment Love you Jesus. Dear God, please protect me and my loved ones from harm and danger. Dear God, may I be a reflection of your love and grace to the world around me. Dear God, thank you for your infinite wisdom and understanding, which surpasses all human knowledge. Dear God, I surrender my worries and fears to you, trusting that you will guide me in the right direction. Type 1010 if you agree. Dear God, I come to you in prayer for strength. I ask that you watch over and protect them and guide them along their path. Surround them with your love, strength, and wisdom, so that they may overcome any challenges that come their way. Please provide strength with the comfort and peace of mind they need during difficult times. May they feel your presence and know that they are not alone in their struggles. Bless strength and keep them safe from harm. May they be filled with joy and happiness today and always. In your name I pray. Amen. In God's plan, even when you don't understand it. This quote reminds us that even though we may not always know what God's plan is, we can trust that it is good and will lead us to where we need to be. God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called. This quote reminds us that God doesn't choose people based on their abilities or strengths, but rather on their willingness to follow His plan. God's plan is always better than our own. This quote reminds us that even though we may have our own plans and ideas for our lives, God's plan is always better and will ultimately lead to our greatest happiness and fulfillment. God has a purpose for your pain, a reason for your struggles, and a reward for your faithfulness. This quote reminds us that even when we are going through difficult times, God has a plan and purpose for our hardships, and that if we remain faithful, we will be rewarded. Type 999 if you believe. God's plan for your life is bigger than your own imagination. This quote reminds us that God's plans for us are greater than we can imagine, and that we should trust Him to lead us to places we never thought possible. God's plan is like a GPS for our lives. This quote compares God's plan to a GPS, guiding us through the twists and turns of life and leading us to our destination. God's plan is not about what you accomplish, but who you become. This quote reminds us that God's plan for us is not just about achieving success or accomplishments, but about becoming the person He created us to be. God's plan for your life is tailor-made for you. This quote reminds us that God's plan for each of us is unique and customized to fit our individual needs and desires. God's plan may not be what you want, but it is always what you need. This quote reminds us that even though we may not always understand or agree with God's plan for us, it is always what we need in order to grow and learn. Like the video if you believe. God's plan will always prevail over our own plans. This quote reminds us that God's plan is ultimately what will come to pass, regardless of our own plans and efforts. God's plan may be different from what you expected, but it is always better. This quote reminds us that even when God's plan takes us in unexpected directions, it is always for the best. God's plan for us includes both blessings and challenges. This quote reminds us that God's plan for us is not without its difficulties, but that even these challenges serve a purpose. God's plan is not always easy, but it is always worth it. This quote reminds us that following God's plan for our lives may not always be easy, but in the end, it is always worth it. God's plan for our lives is a journey, not a destination. This quote reminds us that following God's plan is not just about reaching a specific end goal, but about the experiences and lessons we gain along the way. Surrendering to God's plan is the key to finding true peace and happiness. This quote reminds us that true peace and happiness can only be found by surrendering to God's plan and letting go of our own desires and agendas. God's plan is not limited by our circumstances. This quote reminds us that even when our circumstances seem difficult or limiting, God's plan for us is still possible and achievable. Comment: Love you, God. God's plan for our lives is always aligned with His will. This quote reminds us that when we follow God's plan for our lives, we are aligning ourselves with His will and purposes. God's plan for us is always rooted in love. This quote reminds us that no matter what God's plan for us may be, it is always rooted in His love for us. God's plan for us is to bring glory to His name. This quote reminds us that the ultimate purpose of God's plan for us is to bring glory and honor to His name. God's plan for our lives is to live a life of purpose and significance. This quote reminds us that by following God's plan for our lives, we can live a life of purpose and significance that impacts others. Please subscribe to God Miracles Message 1111. And thanks for watching this video.